So between Mark Zuckerberg doing his best impression of a human while testifying before Congress and Facebook potentially being used as a tool to destabilize democracy, it seems like the world's leading social media platform is in the news more than ever. We felt it would be the perfect time to revisit David Fincher's 2010 blockbuster hit, The Face Smash. The Social Network. We wanted to separate fact from fiction, and like the most popular relationship status on the site, it's complicated. So let's start with the belly of the beast, the love guru himself, Mark Zuckerberg. Played in an Academy Award-nominated turn by Jesse Eisenberg doing his best Michael Cera impersonation of himself.
Who wrote this behavioral issues when I pay money every month to talk to people about it.
The viewer walked away from the film believing that Mark is a cold, calculating, sociopathic genius who changed the entire way the human race interacts with each other because he got dumped. From the opening salvo all the way to the closing scene, the motivation for Mark Zuckerberg is very clear. He is madly in love with Erica Albright, and no amount of money, empire building, or single-handedly changing human history can alter that cold and inalienable fact. There's just one problem. Erica Albright doesn't exist. Neither does the entire character arc of a heartbroken Mark Zuckerberg. He didn't go from being broken up to being the next Bill Gates. Starting from the beginning, he did script Face Smash while drunk late one night at Harvard. He kept a live journal at the time, and a lot of the dialogue written for that scene is actually taken directly from it. He does call an unknown woman a bitch and goes on to say "let the hacking begin" in reference to the Kirkland House photographs. Face Smash was a crude hot or not ripoff that pitted photos from 9 houses at the university and allowed students to vote on users' attractiveness. At the time, there were no online Facebooks at Harvard with only paper sheets distributed, so the ability to have online access to all the photos from the houses became an instant sensation. Now, not to defend a multi-billionaire who started an empire on a shallow sex hierarchy, but Face Smash actually had men in it as well. Watching the film, you probably get the impression that Zuckerberg is a cold, calculating super nerd who doesn't fit in with the rest of society. He's mean and condescending and constantly aware of how much smarter he is than everyone around him. However, most accounts written from people who knew him or are still friends almost universally paint a different picture. Zuckerberg was known for being outwardly friendly and often smiling. Even when he's seen in public, it seems like he's less Lex Luthor and more Robin Williams in Bicentennial Man. He wasn't recruited by the Winklevoss brothers for crashing the Harvard server. They actually found out about him when their existing coder for HarvardConnections.com dropped out of the project and suggested Zuckerberg instead. And their partner Divya Narendra was not the driving force between seeking litigation against Zuckerberg. He actually moved on. The Winklevoss brothers also did tip off the Crimson in late spring 2004, unlike the claims in the film. Next, we meet Mark's best friend Eduardo Saverin. Now, it is true that Eduardo put up $1,000 to help start the Facebook, but he wasn't Mark's best friend. But Zuckerberg's real best friend was Adam D'Angelo, his Exeter classmate and the first CTO of Facebook. Someone who, like Priscilla Chan, the woman Zuckerberg dated and would subsequently marry, is completely left out of the film. He would eventually leave Facebook to found Quora. Zuckerberg also put up his own money to start the Facebook and eventually had to borrow some of his parents' money to keep it running. Also, Eduardo did put up his own ads on the Facebook, contrary to the outcome of the argument between him and Zuckerberg in the movie. Then there's Sean Parker, who was written into the movie the most Sorkinist way imaginable.
I founded Napster.
Sean Parker founded Napster.
Nice to meet you.
There's no debating that Sorkin doesn't have a keen skill for making mundane things appear gripping through his clever prose. But it always reminds you that real humans don't speak this way. We're not that clever. Sean Parker actually found out about the Facebook by going on the computer of his roommate's girlfriend and then sent an email to Zuckerberg to try and set up that meeting. It is true that Eduardo did not move out to Palo Alto despite his numerous pleas from Zuckerberg. Unlike what the film portrays, however, there wasn't a consistent party going on in California, it was a lot more work, and some accounts even claim that it was Saverin who was partying in New York at the time. He did freeze the Facebook bank account out of fear that he was being pushed out. This created the rift that would eventually set up the whole restructuring of the company. You see, the biggest contribution Sean Parker actually made to Facebook was convincing Mark Zuckerberg to maintain majority share and voting power throughout its growth. By doing this, he allowed Mark to maintain complete control over the company and constantly shape it in his own vision. Saverin was less of a close friend who got edged out by Parker and more of a dead weight who needed to have his stocks diluted so the company could continue to flourish. The film is based on the novel The Accidental Billionaires, The Founding of Facebook, A Tale of Sex, Money, Genius, and Betrayal by Ben Murch. A novelist who cannot decide on one title, so he included 5. It's no surprise that Eduardo served as Murch's main consultant while writing the novel, and Mark Zuckerberg declined to speak to him at all. Saverin renounced his citizenship in favor of Singapore and dodged nearly $700 million in taxes in the process. His actual working tenure at Facebook was remarkably short, making him the only true accidental billionaire in this story. Sean Parker, meanwhile, did get kicked out of Facebook, but not in the way the movie portrays. He was never arrested with minors while doing cocaine. He was arrested for cocaine possession in 2005 on a kiteboarding trip, but was never charged and eventually stepped down from his position so that it wouldn't negatively affect the company. Finally, there's the women of the film, or should we say the talking props with breasts. The movie got a moderate amount of backlash for its portrayal of women. Aaron Sorkin addressed the issue by saying that he was portraying life as it was in that environment, sexism and all. Quote, "More generally, I was writing about a very angry and deeply misogynistic group of people. These aren't the cuddly nerds we made movies about in the 80s. They're very angry that the cheerleader still wants to go out with the quarterback instead of the men who are running the universe right now." Despite that, there wasn't any evidence that there were groupies who performed sexual favors on Zuckerberg or his fellow programmers. Some members of Zuckerberg's inner circle were actually gay, and there were numerous women of significance left out of the film. Sheryl Sandberg, the COO of Facebook, was a fellow Harvard grad, and Zuckerberg also hired his own sister to work in the company. Finally, there's Priscilla Chan, Mark's current wife. They met each other in Mark's sophomore year while he was still working on the Facebook, and they're still married to this day. It destroys the entire arc of his character, especially the final scene where he's still obsessed with this phantom ex-girlfriend despite all his success. Well, that's everything we have for today. Did we leave something out? Please let us know in the comments. We're not above being corrected. We're as fallible as Mark Zuckerberg. If you like what you watch, please comment, subscribe, and like. It helps us produce more content. And listen to the Surfs podcast at wearesurfs.com.